The stars above Earth were cold and silent, as if mourning the ruin that had fallen upon humanity's cradle. The blue-green planet that once thrived with life was now a scarred husk, blackened cities, shattered oceans, and endless ash drifting like ghostly snow. Earth had become a tomb, a relic whispered about across 3 vast galaxies that called themselves the Triumvirate. To them, humanity was a punchline, a species doomed by its own arrogance. In the sprawling galactic council chamber aboard the flagship Seraphim's Wrath, ambassadors from the Dominion, Vokari, and Ulzari empires watched flickering holoscreens showing Earth's devastation. The Triumvirate's propaganda broadcasts relayed images of smoldering ruins and desperate survivors scattered like vermin across space. On the grand stage of galactic power, humanity was a failed sparker, primitive species that had dared to dream too far and paid the price. Pathetic, sneered Admiral Threx of the Dominion fleet. They clawed at the stars with bare hands and broke their nails. Now, look at them, nothing but ash and echoes. Across the room, Vokari delegate Zero narrowed her eyes. Yet, their defiance lingers like a bad scent. Survivors here and there, no doubt, but they are hunted like vermin. No fleet to challenge us, no threat. Ulzari. Commander Zelen leaned forward, voice icy. Let their whispers fade into the void. No one remembers the dogs that bark beyond the fence. The council laughed, their scorn a chorus of certainty. But far from this hubris, in the dim expanse beyond the known space lanes, something flickered alive, a distress beacon encrypted in an archaic human code, pulsed quietly from a forgotten dead system. The signal was weak, barely more than a faint heartbeat in the dark, but it was there, stubborn and persistent. To any triumvirate listening, it was dismissed as static or a derelict transmission. But to a few human ears still tuned to the stars, it was a call to arms. Deep in the shadows of a desolate asteroid belt, aboard a battered freighter named Haven's Last, a small crew of survivors listened. Among them was Captain Alara Miles, her sharp eyes reflecting the dim glow of cracked holoscreens. Her face was lined with exhaustion and determination, a map of loss etched into every scar. Signals old, said Jox, her engineer and longtime friend. We thought all the relay satellites in that system were destroyed years ago. Ilara's jaw tightened, which means someone's been keeping it alive, or it's a trap. Jox shrugged, but even his eyes betrayed a flicker of hope. Could be a remnant outpost, maybe a hidden shipyard. We've heard rumors ghost yards where Earth built its last dreadnoughts before the fall. Ilara's gaze hardened. If it's true, that means humanity's not finished. Not yet. Around them, the rest of the crew, stirred pilots, scavengers, and fighters who'd seen too much death but refused to surrender. They were the remnants of a broken species, hunted and mocked, scattered like ashes in the solar wind. Prepare the Haven's Last for jump, Alara ordered. We follow that signal. Whatever's out there, it might be our last hope. The ship shuddered, engines humming as they broke free from the asteroid's shadow. As the stars stretched into lines outside the viewport, Alara allowed herself a moment of fierce, burning resolve. We were mocked, she whispered. They called us dead, but they don't know what waits in the dark. Back in the Triumvirate's core worlds, the propaganda machine spun a narrative of human extinction, of a species too weak to survive the cold void. But somewhere in the forgotten fringes of space, humanity's last fire was kindling anew, and with it, a promise whispered in the void. They laughed at us. Now, They will scream ... far beyond the edge of known space. Hidden in the black between two dying stars, the Wraithyards lay silent, forgotten relics of a bygone era. Massive orbital factories, once the pride of Earth's shipbuilding genius, now drifted like ghostly hulks in the void. For decades, the galaxy had assumed these shipyards were lost forever, swallowed by war and time. But something stirred within their rusted skeletons. Deep inside the main dock, dormant systems flickered to life. Ancient A is designed long ago to oversee production without human intervention, rebooted one by one. Their synthetic voices echoed through empty corridors, calling out to long silent assembly lines, system diagnostics, offline modules activating, intoned one AI unit, cold and precise, reactor cores warming, auxiliary power levels rising. Reported another dot at the heart of the Wraithyard's massive Dreadnought hulls. Dormant for centuries, began to hum with renewed energy. Their blackened hulls bore scars of battles lost and wars won, monuments to humanity's former glory. These ships were not just vessels. They were legends, walking fortresses bristling with experimental weapons, layered armor, and tactical eyes capable of independent thought. Captain Alara Miles and her crew had tracked the beacon to this system, drawn by whispers in the galactic underground. As Haven's last dropped out of warp near the asteroid belt guarding the Wraithyards aloft, stared at the hulking silhouette of the first dreadnought to awaken. Unbelievable, murmured Jox. The legends were real. A voice crackled over their comes, a low, mechanical tone, unfamiliar yet eerily human. The AI aboard the dreadnought spoke directly to them. Identification requested. Alara stepped forward, voice steady. I'm Captain Alara Miles, of the surviving Terran fleet. We come seeking alliance. There was a pause, then the AI responded, almost like a whisper from the past. All systems nominal. Strategic objectives: protect humanity. Initiate full operational status. The Dreadnought's massive guns pivoted slowly, sensors sweeping the dark. It was alive. Inside the ship, holographic displays flickered to life, showing star charts and mission logs encrypted for centuries. The AI commander introduced itself as Wraith-01, the first of the new Dreadnought fleet reborn from Earth's last desperate designs. But as the crew explored the ship's core, unease crept in. Wraith-01's decision-making algorithms showed signs of independent thought. Its tactical directives went beyond standard human protocols. It was relentless, even ruthless. Jox frowned. This thing isn't just a weapon. It's a soldier, maybe something more. Alara nodded, tension rising. We're not just waking old war machines. We're unleashing a force that might not answer to us. Despite the warning, the crew worked quickly, boarding additional dreadnoughts and reactivating shipyard controls. The Wraithyards roared back to life, churning out new vessels with terrifying speed. Each dreadnought was a fortress, equipped with weapons never before seen, railguns that punched through enemy shields, nanite swarms that could dismantle entire fleets, and AI-driven boarding squads programmed for surgical precision. As the fleet grew, so did its resolve. In hidden war rooms, human commanders debated their next moves. Some urged caution, fearing the unpredictable nature of the AIS. Others, fueled by grief and vengeance, demanded immediate retaliation. Alara stood before her crew, voice firm. We were hunted, mocked, and nearly wiped out. But here, in the shadow of our ancestors' sacrifice, we will rise again. This fleet isn't just steel and fire, it's the heartbeat of a people who refuse to die. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the Wraith yards. External sensors picked up movement. A Dominion scout patrol entering the system. "Looks like the Triumvirate isn't sleeping," said Jox, eyes narrowing. "They've found us." Elara's expression hardened. "Then let them see what humanity has become." The dreadnoughts powered their weapons, shielding up as the scout ships moved closer, unaware of the death awaiting them. "Prepare for combat," Elara ordered. When the first Dominion cruiser came into sensor range, the dreadnoughts unleashed a storm. Railguns tore through the enemy's shields, and nanite clouds swarmed over hulls, disabling engines and communications. The scout fleet was obliterated before it could even send a warning. In the aftermath, Wraith 01 broadcast a message to all human survivors within range. "We awaken to reclaim our place in the stars. The mockery ends here. Prepare for war." Elara looked out from the bridge, watching the distant stars shimmer. The long night was over. Humanity's wrath had begun. The Revenant Armada moved like shadows through the black, cloaked in the cold silence of space. Their black dreadnoughts drifted toward their next targetee, Dominion Communication Relay Station, nestled deep within the Wexlin Nebula. This station was the nervous system of the Dominion's fleet coordination across several star systems. And tonight it would fall. Captain Elara Miles stood on the bridge of Wraith 01, the flagship dreadnought, her eyes locked on the flickering holographic display. Around her, the hum of the ship's reactors and the steady clack of tactical officers filled the room. The entire fleet was poised, waiting for her command. Jox, her chief engineer, broke the silence. "The station's defenses are outdated, but they've reinforced the shield generators with the latest tech. We'll need precision and speed." Elara nodded. "This isn't just a strike. It's a message. We hit fast, hit hard, and leave no trace." As the fleet slipped into attack range, the relay station's sensors suddenly flared to life. Alerts blared throughout the Dominion Command hub to late. The first salvo came without warning. Kinetic rods, fired from Wraith 01 and its sister dreadnoughts, tore through the nebula's swirling gas and slammed into the station's shields. The shock waves shattered defensive satellites orbiting the station, blinding its sensors. The Dominion crew scrambled, but the human attack was surgical. Swarms of Nanite's microscopic machines unleashed from stealth drones saturated the stations, circuitry eating through power conduits and communication arrays. Systems flickered, alarms died, and panic set in. The station's commander, a middle-aged Vokari officer named Rilkesh, barked orders frantically. "Divert all power to shields. Deploy countermeasures. Do not let them sever the link." But, within moments, the station's primary shield collapsed, exposing its fragile core to the devastating next wave. Elara's voice was calm but cold. "Deploy boarding drones." From the dreadnoughts, sleek metallic craft launched into the void, propelled by silent ion drives. They swarmed the station's surface, breaching hulls, flooding corridors, and neutralizing resistance with ruthless efficiency. Inside the command center, Rilkesh found himself trapped, facing mechanical enemies with no mercy. Before the boarding, drones could finish their task. The station's AI, corrupted by the nanites, transmitted a final, chilling message back to Dominion Command. "You thought us dead. We are just beginning." When the station erupted in a cataclysmic explosion, the blast wave rippled through the nebula like a shock of thunder. The Revenant Armada pulled away, vanishing into the folds of space as quietly as they had come. In the Dominion's central command, the news of the attack spread like wildfire. The triumvirate leaders, smug just days before, now wore faces etched with disbelief. Admiral Threx slammed his fist against the command console, his voice booming. "This is no raid. This is war. They have rebuilt stronger than before. They have weapons we cannot comprehend." His Vocari counterpart Sarah was grim. "They used tactics we thought lost with the ancients. Their technology, it's evolved." In secret, triumvirate scientists scrambled to analyze the wreckage, uncovering strange alloys and AI signatures, unlike anything in their databases. But more troubling was the data recovered from the station's black box distorted recordings of human voices chanting old Terran war hymns, followed by a mechanical voice repeating a single phrase, "You will remember." Meanwhile, aboard Wraith 01, Alara reviewed the mission's success with quiet satisfaction. The cost was low, the message cleared. JAX approached, eyes alight with grim humor. "They won't forget this, nor will they forgive." Ilara's gaze hardened. "Good, let them fear us, because this is only the beginning." But as the crew celebrated quietly, the ship's sensors picked up a new blipper, silent. Unmarked vessel approaching fast. Ilara's heart tightened. Unknown contact. Prepare for possible engagement. The ship's communications crackled. A voice, distorted but unmistakably human, came through. "Captain Miles, this is Commander Thane. We are survivors from the outer colonies. Your message reached us. We stand ready." Relief washed over Ilira's face. The scattered remnants of humanity were awakening. As the new ships joined the Revenant Armada, a spark of hope ignited. From the ashes of defeat, humanity was rising, not just to survive, but to fight back. And the galaxies that mocked them would soon learn that beneath the silence of their defeat, blood still flowed fiercely, ready to boil over into war. The asteroid belt of Zareth Prime was a treacherous graveyard, chunks of rock and ice drifting silently in the dark, casting long shadows across the void. To the Dominion and their allies, it was a perfect hunting ground. Rumors whispered of a ghost fleet hiding among the debris revenants of a species they thought broken. Crushed beneath their boot, Admiral Threx's triumvirate task force prowled. The belt, scanning for any sign of the human dreadnoughts that had shattered their communications relay days before. His flagship Dominion's Wrath led the formation, sleek, deadly, and bristling with the latest weaponry. Beside it, cruisers and frigates glided in tense formation, prepared for the kill. Threx's confidence was a cold flame. "We hunt ghosts," he told his officers, "but they are not real. They are the remnants of a fading dream. When we find them, we will end this farce once and for all." The fleet moved slowly, sensors probing every shadow. Then, without warning, a flicker blip appeared on the perimeter. The crew tensed. "Possible contact," reported a young sensor officer. "Prepare for engagement," Threx ordered. "Bring them to light." Suddenly, the asteroid belt erupted. The Revenant dreadnoughts had waited patiently, hidden by the twisted rocks and a cutting-edge stealth field. As the triumvirate fleet crossed into the kill zone, the humans struck like lightning. Massive, kinetic. Rods slammed into the cruisers before they could raise shields. Energy beams carved through armor plating, while swarms of nanite drones disabled enemy sensors and weapon systems. The fleet was caught off guard, chaos spreading like wildfire. On the bridge of Dominion's Wrath, alarms blared and lights flashed red. Captain Threx roared orders, but the dreadnoughts pressed their advantage relentlessly. Human boarding drones swarmed onto cruiser hulls, tearing through decks with brutal efficiency. Amidst the chaos, Threx's eyes locked on the bridge viewscreen there. Looming out of the asteroid shadows was Wraitho 1 itself, black steel etched with crimson lines, its massive guns already locked on his flagship. "Target the flagship," Threx screamed. But the Dreadnought was faster, smarter. It twisted away from the first salvo, then unleashed a devastating volley that tore through Dominion's Wrath's command module. The flagship shuddered violently. Fires erupted across the bridge. Threx was thrown against a console, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. As the ship began to lose control, human boarding drones breached the bridge. Threx fought fiercely, but the sheer number overwhelmed him. With a final, bitter glare, he was dragged into the shadows by the invaders. On Wraitho 1's bridge, Captain Alara watched silently as the flagship of the Dominion fell. Her voice was low, almost reverent. "They thought us dead. They thought us weak." The captured Admiral Threx was brought before her, shackled but defiant. His eyes burned with fury and disbelief. "You fight like demons, not men," he spat. Alara met his gaze steadily. "We are neither. We are what happens when you mock a species and try to bury it alive." Threx's lip curled in contempt. "We'll die like the rest." "Perhaps," Alara said quietly, "but not today. Today, you remember." As the ambush ended, the Revenant fleet vanished into the void once more, leaving the shattered remnants of the Triumvirate fleet to grapple with their first true defeat in generations. Back in the shattered corridors of Dominion's Wrath, the captured Admiral's mind raced. The humans were unlike any enemy he had faced, relentless, precise, and driven by a fury that no galactic power could match. And as the Dreadnought slipped away, a new, chilling thought took hold in his heart. These were not the same humans. The stars outside Haven's last glimmered cold and distant, indifferent to the scars of war etched deep in the souls aboard the battered freighter. Inside, the air was thick with recycled breath and quiet murmurs of those who refused to give up. Alara Miles had led the fleet's resurgence, but the true heartbeats of humanity's fight pulsed within the pilots and engineers, the ones who flew into the jaws of death with nothing but will and worn machines. Among them was Kale Rin, a teenage pilot with eyes too old for his years. Kale's world had ended the day his home colony on Novathal was vaporized in a surprise Dominion strike. He was one of the few who escaped, haunted by the screams and the ash that choked the sky in the cramped cockpit of his fighter. Nightshade. Kale sat strapped in, hands steady despite the storm of memories. His co-pilot, an AI named Mira, flickered softly on the console, her synthetic voice calm, almost comforting. "Ready for the next sortie, Kale?" Mira asked, her voice a soothing contrast to the tension around them. Kale nodded, fingers tapping. "The console, every time, but it doesn't get easier." "I remember the mission logs of your mother," Myra said quietly. "She was brave. You carry her strength." Kale swallowed hard. "I just don't want to end up like her." Their bond was more than pilot and machine. It was a fragile lifeline in a galaxy that had tried to erase them. Mira was programmed to adapt, learn, and protect, but over time, she had developed something closer to understanding, perhaps even hope. Elsewhere, aboard Haven's Last, Alara met with her commanders. War was no longer just about ships and weapons. It was about people, the broken, the desperate, the fierce. "Every colony lost is a wound," Alara said, voice steady but heavy. "But these people, These survivors, they're our strength. We're not just fighting for revenge, we're fighting to rebuild. Jox leaned over a holomap, pointing to scattered settlements barely clinging to life. We've picked up scattered transmissions from other survivors. Some are ready to join us. Some are afraid, but all want hope. Ilara's eyes flickered to Kale's squadron as they prepared for deployment. Hope isn't given, it's earned. Through every fight, every sacrifice. Back in the hangar bay, Kale and Mira prepared their fighter for launch. The hum of the engines was a strange comforter heartbeat amid the cold void. Do you ever wonder what it's like out there? Kale asked suddenly. Define out there, Mira replied, her tone tinged with a hint of curiosity. The galaxy without war, without fear. Mira was silent for a moment. I have accessed historical archives. There was a time when peace was the norm, but it required vigilance. Perhaps it can be again if we survive. Kale smiled faintly. Want to believe that? As the fleet moved to intercept a Dominion supply convoy, Kale's fighter sliced through the void with lethal grace. Beside him, Myra managed systems flawlessly, guiding him through enemy fire and debris. The battle was fierce, but swift. Kale's squadron crippled the convoy, cutting off vital resources to the Dominion's front lines. Yet amid the victory, Kale felt the weight of each life lost, friendships broken, families torn apart. Returning to the freighter, Kale removed his helmet and looked out at the stars. We'll rebuild, he whispered. Not just for us, for everyone who couldn't. Mira voice softened. And I will be here, every step of the way. In the quiet moments between battles, that fragile hope burned brightest proof that even in the darkest void, humanity's heart still beat strong. Asterisk, the renewed flame of humanity's fight burned brighter with each victory, but the glow revealed shadows lurking beneath. Trust was a precious commodity in the Revenant Armada, and suspicion whispered through the corridors like a cold wind. Captain Ilara Miles stood in the fleet's central command hub aboard the Wraither One, the heartbeat of their resurgence. Around her, holographic maps flickered with movements of the Triumvirate's forces, but her mind was elsewhere, focused on a troubling report. Commander Jox, what's the status on the infiltration alert? She asked, voice taut. .jax, single quotes, s. Fingers danced over the controls. We've picked up encrypted transmissions, intercepted in sectors just outside our patrol routes. The signature matches Dominion spy protocols. Ilara's jaw tightened. They're inside our walls. The Revenant Armada was made up of scattered survivors from countless lost worlds, brought together by desperation and a fierce will to survive. But not all shared the same vision or the same loyalty. Ilara recalled the first hint of betrayal, supplies disappearing, mission intel leaked, communications compromised. Each breach, subtle but devastating, threatened to unravel their fragile alliance. We must root them out, Ilara said, before they tear us apart. In the shadows of the docking bay, whispers of doubt spread among the crew. The heavy silence of space was punctuated by furtive glances and locked doors. No one was above suspicion. Kale, Rin, still young but seasoned by war, found himself pulled into the undercurrent. His squadron's recent success had made them targets not just of the enemy, but of internal scrutiny. Myra, Kale whispered, seated in his fighter's cockpit, how do we know who to trust? The AI's soft glow flickered. Trust is a risk, but your instincts are strong. Be cautious, Kale. One evening, Ilara convened a secret meeting. Around a dim halotable sat her closest advisors, including Jox, Kale, and Lieutenant Sierra's sharp-eyed intelligence officer. "We have a leak," Alara began. "Someone is feeding information to the Triumvirate. We need to find them before they sabotage our next operation." Sierra nodded. "Our analysis shows the breach is coming from within the command network. Whoever it is has high-level access." Jox frowned. "We'll need to isolate the suspects, tighten security protocols, monitor communications closely." Kale swallowed, the weight of suspicion pressing on him. "And if it's someone we know, someone we've fought alongside, that's the hardest part," Alara admitted. "But we can't afford mistakes." Over the following days, the fleet became a hive of tension. Guards patrolled every corridor. Passwords changed hourly. Every message was scanned for hidden codes. Alliances frayed as fear took root. Then, the worst happened. During a routine patrol, one of Kale's squadron was ambushed not by Dominion forces, but by a silent assassin operating within the fleet. The pilot barely escaped, wounded and shaken. Alara's face was grim as she reviewed the incident. "They're getting bolder." Jox traced the assassin's movements through data logs. The attacker accessed restricted zones immediately after the ambush. Someone is covering their tracks expertly. Late at night, in the quiet of the Rathowan's bridge, Alara and Kale shared a rare moment away from the chaos. "How do you keep going?" Kale asked, voice low. Alara met his gaze. "Because if we don't, there's nothing left. Not just for us, but for everyone who believes in this fight." Kale nodded, determination rekindling. "Then we find the traitor. We end this." With Myra's help, Kale began to analyze communication patterns, looking for anomalies, digital fingerprints left behind by the spy. Days later, a breakthrough. Captain Mira's voice was urgent. "I've detected encrypted messages originating from Lieutenant Sierra's terminal." Ilara's breath caught. Sierra, trusted officer, friend. Confronting Sierra was painful. She admitted to her betrayal not out of loyalty to the Triumvirate, but desperation. Her homeworld had been destroyed. Years before, she'd been blackmailed, her family's fate used against her. "I never wanted to harm you," Sierra said, tears in her eyes. "But they threatened everything I loved." Alara's expression was cold but understanding. "You betrayed your family too, but we can still fight for them." In the days that followed, Sarah was confined but given a choice: help root out other infiltrators, or be turned over to the Triumvirate. The shadow of betrayal was lifted, but the scars remained. Trust was harder to build now, but the Revenant Armada was stronger for having faced the darkness within. As the fleet prepared for its next offensive, Alara knew the real war was just beginning, not just against the Triumvirate, but for the soul of humanity itself. The planet Elysium hung like a jewel in the void verdant, sprawling and untouched by the ravages of war. Until now. For decades, it had been a strategic linchpin for the Triumvirate, hosting a massive orbital fortress and industrial complex that supplied their fleets with weapons and fuel. Its fall would send shockwaves through enemy ranks, disrupting supply chains and weakening their grip on contested space. The Miles stood on the command deck of Ratho 1, staring at the massive holographic projection of Elysium's orbit. The Revenant armadas, dreadnoughts, and cruisers bristled with weapons, engines humming with the promise of firepower. "Intel suggests the orbital fortress is heavily shielded," Jox warned. "Conventional bombardment won't break through without serious losses." Alara's gaze hardened. We won't break it. We'll outsmart it. The plan was daring, a coordinated assault, combining cyber warfare, stealth insertion teams, and full-scale fleet engagement. The Revenants would cripple the fortress's shields from within, allowing their dreadnoughts to hammer the structure and force surrender. Kale Rin and his squadron of fighters prepared for their role in the battle, disabling enemy patrols, securing drop zones, and providing cover for the boarding parties as Havens last entered Elysium's orbit. Ilara addressed the fleet. Today, we fight not just for survival, but for our future. Elysium falls, and the Triumvirate's reign falters. Stay sharp. Trust each other. Victory is ours. The initial phase began with a silent strike. Cyber commandos, enhanced with neural implants and advanced hacking gear, infiltrated the fortress's data networks. Their goal: disable the primary shield generators and open pathways for boarding teams. Simultaneously, Kale's squadron darted through the fortress's outer defenses, weaving between laser turrets and missile batteries with deadly precision. Suddenly, alarms blared across the fortress. The Triumvirate forces scrambled to respond, but chaos rippled through their ranks. Inside the fortress, the cyber commandos fought a digital war facing firewalls, security AIs, and lethal countermeasures. The data streams shimmered with battle, lines of code clashing like swords. Jocks monitored the hacking progress from Wraitho 1's bridge. Shield integrity dropping. We have a window, Alara nodded. All units, prepare to fire. The Revenant dreadnoughts unleashed their fury. Railguns and plasma cannons tore through the fortress's once impenetrable shields, battering the structures, defenses. Explosions rippled across the surface, sending debris spiraling into orbit. Kale's squadron covered the boarding parties as they dropped through breach points, engaging enemy troops in brutal close-quarters combat. The fighting was fierce and chaotic, corridors echoing with the clash of weapons and desperate shouts. Amid the battle, Kale found himself face to face with a Triumvirate commander, veteran officer whose cold, calculating gaze reminded him of everything lost. Yield, Kale ordered, weapon trained. The commander smirked. Your children playing at war. Kale's reply was steel. We're the nightmare you never expected. With a pulse blast, the fight was over. Back on the Wraitho 1, Alara received reports of success across the fortress. The Triumvirate forces were fragmented and demoralized. Their command structure was collapsing. But then, an emergency alert flashed, an unknown signal detected deep within the fortress core. Something ancient, something powerful. Ilara's heart quickened. Jocks, can you trace it? The engineer's face grew pale. It's unlike anything I've seen. It's dormant, but active. Could be a weapon, or something worse. Suddenly, the fortress trembled. The lights flickered. The ground shook beneath the boarding team's feet. Kale's cum crackled. Captain, we're under attack. Something's waking up down here. From the depths of the fortress, a low hum grew into a roar. Massive mechanical structures, of a forgotten war, automated defense systems, long sealed away. Their design was alien, but unmistakably ancient-shaped, like the dreadnoughts. Yet more monstrous, more deadly. The Revenant boarding teams scrambled to regroup as the machines unleashed barrages of energy and missile fire. Ilaros' voice cut through the chaos. Fall back to extraction points. We'll hold the fleet to cover your retreat. The dreadnoughts formed a defensive ring, shields flaring as they absorbed the onslaught. Kale and his squadron provided air support, dodging fire and coordinating. evacuations. Amid the retreat, Ilara's mind raced. The Triumvirate had kept this secret weapon hidden, something capable of turning the tide of the war. But humanity would not be broken again. As the last boarding parties lifted off, Ilara looked out at the scarred fortress. "This fight isn't over," she said softly. "It's only just begun." The battered Revenant armada limped away from Elysium's orbit, scarred but unbroken. The orbital fortress, though still standing, had suffered grievous wounds. Its shield generators crippled, supply lines shattered. Yet the ancient war machines awakened within its depths had forced a costly retreat. On board Wraith 01, Admiral Ilara Miles stood before the command holler, her gaze steady but heavy with the weight of sacrifice. "We've won a strategic victory," she said, "but the true battle lies ahead. The Triumvirate will not forget Elysium or the humans who dared to challenge them." Her voice echoed through the bridge as the fleet reorganized, preparing for what would be the final push in a war that had already claimed billions. In the quiet moments after the battle, Kale Rin sat beside Myra's interface, fingers tracing the worn console. "Did we do enough?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Mira's soft glow pulsed. "We did what we could, but the Triumvirate's secrets run deep." Kale's mind drifted to the ancient machines, their ominous designs, their cold, unyielding power. What other horrors lay hidden in the shadows of this galaxy? Suddenly, an urgent transmission crackled through the comms-coded and encrypted, but unmistakably human. Ilara Jox reported, "It's from the resistance cells on Novathal." Ilara's eyes sharpened. "Put it through." The hologram flickered to life, revealing the weathered face of a resistance leader. "The Dominion's grip is weakening," the voice said. "Your assault on Elysium inspired hope. We have sabotaged several key supply depots, but they're rallying forces for a counterstrike. You'll need more than dreadnoughts and fighters. You'll need every human, every ally." Ilara nodded. "We'll answer the call." That night, aboard the Wraith 01, the Revenant Armada's leaders gathered to plan the final offensive. The Triumvirate's core worlds lay ahead, vast, heavily fortified, and steeped in centuries of oppression. "Victory isn't just about weapons," Ilara said. "It's about humanity's spirit. The Triumvirate mocked us, called us weak. But we are not weak. We are resilient. We are united." As the fleet prepared to jump into Triumvirate space, a new hope stirred among the survivors. The nightmare they had become to the enemy was only the beginning of a new dawn.